Destiny Generation.
You gotta go out.
Know your faith.
Gotta know it to share.
We have to let everyone know.
Let me tell you about it.
Share the faith.
Don't you know that my faith is important to me? It's our destiny.
We are the Destiny Generation.
All right, you get to hear the Saturday night talk when everything's better tonight. And everyone knows that things are cooler at night. They don't have the prom in the late morning. They have the high school prom at night. You know, HBO isn't on this afternoon. HBO is on tonight. It's not Monday midday football. It's Monday night football. Not Tuesday afternoon live. Saturday night live, because it's cooler at night and it's cooler on Saturday. I feel bad for Tuesday. Like Monday's that day everybody hates. You know, Wednesday's hump day, Thursday's Friday Eve. They get Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the weekend, and then there's this extra day just kind of wedged in there to make there be 7. No, you get the Saturday night talk. I don't even start to get interesting until 2 p.m. I'm a night owl. So everything's cooler Saturday night, including Catholic testimonials, which you are about to hear because I wasn't always a Catholic. I'm one of those converts, not just from Protestantism, but from agnosticism. I started out agnostic, which means I didn't know if God existed or not. And then from there, I ended up a Baptist preacher, pastor of my own church in Texas, the heart of the Bible Belt. And then, yes, somehow I went from Baptist preacher to Roman Catholic. So having gone from agnostic to Baptist to Catholic, you could call this the ABCs of conversion. All right. And my story, like, how with a name like, good Catholic Irish name like Ian Murphy, was I not already Catholic? It's beyond me, but I wasn't. And like most people's stories, mine doesn't begin with me, it begins with somebody else. In my case, my Uncle Tim. My dad's brother Tim, who's also my godfather, and was the first of 9 converts to the Catholic Church in my family. I was the 6th, so I was stubborn. It took me a while. But he was the trailblazer. When one day, years ago, some Protestants knocked on his door to try to convert him to a teaching that God predestines people to go to hell. Now, this isn't Christian, this isn't biblical, it's certainly not what the church has ever taught. I don't even think John Calvin taught it, but some of his followers called Calvinists teach this teaching. Now, why do they try to convert people to it? I mean, if you have no choice, if you're going to heaven, why convert people if they're pre-programmed? So I never got that. If people are predestined to their fate and have no say in the matter and no free will, why go knock on doors and try to convert? I never got that. Well, Jesus certainly never said people are predestined for hell. He said, you know, it's not in my will that any should be lost. And so my uncle points this out to these door-knocking Calvinists trying to convert him to this doctrine. And he says, Jesus never taught that. And they said, well, yeah, well, you see, Jesus was ignorant of this. And we've got it sorted. My uncle says, so you're more enlightened than Jesus? Gentlemen, this conversation is over. And he went straight away to the Roman Catholic Initiation of Adults, RCIA, and became the first of 9 converts and counting. I hope it doesn't stop there. One more, we hit the double digits. And so my story starts with him, but back to my own timeline. I grew up in a Christian home in that both my parents were born-again Christians. You know, they both had very serious relationships with Jesus. My mom, to this day, remains probably my chief spiritual advisor and confidant, and we're very close. So they raised me in the good news of Jesus, to be sure. But they were also from the Woodstock hippie generation with Beatles and drugs and down with the institution, man. And down with the establishment, man. We don't need those institutions. I got my own thing with God. And so I didn't grow up in a church. You know, I knew about Jesus, but I didn't grow up with cultural institutionalized Christianity, a fact for which I'm pretty grateful because a lot of cultural institutionalized Christianity has always struck me lame. I mean, not real faith, but I mean the phonies. The fakes, empty religiosity, counterfeits. You ever see some of these TV preachers? Like, Like, who talks like this? Do they talk like that at home? Imagine the televangelist at the breakfast table. Would you please pass the Cheerios? I must go upstairs to the bathroom and cast these filthy pearly whites against the frothy waters of the Crest toothpaste, and they shall be cleansed. Hallelujah. Who talks like this? Who talks like that? Nobody talks like that. It's so phony. It struck me so fake. So there were aspects of not growing up, churchy that I like. But the flip side is there's a lot I didn't know about. I was 4 years old before I found out what a Bible was. I used to think that the Bible was the Quaker Oat Man. The guy featured on the canister of Quaker oatmeal. Not that he wrote the Bible. I thought when people talked about the Bible, they were talking about him. Now, I don't know what kind of successful marketing strategy made that connection in my little kid brain, but I'll never forget the day when I found out what a Bible was. I was 4 years old in the grocery store with my mom, and I said, "Let's get some Bibles." She said, "Well, that's an interesting interest. We have plenty at home." I said, "No, I already ate them all up." And she said, "Well, that's awfully deep. I know you digest the word." "Well, I don't think they have Bibles at a grocery store." I said, "Sure, the cereal aisle has a whole section of them. Why don't you go get me a Bible, son, and show?" I said, so I run and I bring back, I said, "Here, look, a Bible." I said, "Son, that's not the Bible. That's oatmeal." It shattered my little world. I thought, not only does this thing people keep talking about apparently so inspirational and life-changing, but it's also part of this nutritious breakfast. I just got it all, and then I find out it has nothing to do with the Bible. The Bible's a book. Well, I said, well, maybe I should read this book. And something really compelled me. I wanted to read it. I got so excited about this book, and I started poring over it. When I was 8 years old, I decided I needed to finish the Old Testament. And I didn't know that was weird. Don't worry, I know that now. But, when other kids were out fishing and playing baseball and swimming, I was poring over the Hebrew scriptures. And I thought everybody was. Every kid must be curious about the Old Covenant. Then I found out later, no, I was weird. But I did. I pored over the Old Testament, and my brainy little second-grade mind didn't buy it. It started to struggle. I know what my mom and dad have said, and I know what this book's telling me, and I want it to be true. But I need proof. I got to touch it. That was my nature. I was a skeptic, even that young. And that skepticism started to grow and grow. And so alongside the Old Testament, I also started reading Darwin's Origin of Species, like every second grader does. And by the time I was 14 years old, I had entered into a full-blown agnostic crisis. Now, I wasn't one of these people who doesn't know if God is real, who's apathetic about it or lazy about it. I was actively troubled by it. It really freaked me out, totally stressed, because everything hinges on the God question. And don't ever let anyone tell you it doesn't matter what you believe. Whatever you believe, you will base your life around it. Whatever you're basing your life around is what you believe. So if God's God, then I'm not. And if I'm accountable to God, that matters. And if I was knit together by God, that matters as to who I am and what I'm supposed to be. And if there's no God, and it's up to me who I am, well, that's a totally different story. Everything hangs on this question of God's existence. And I was so stressed, I was having anxiety attacks about it in the 8th grade. And it got so bad, one night I cried out in prayer. I said, okay, I don't know if there's a God. If there is, then I need to touch the spiritual realm for myself, for belief. Allegedly, you did this for Thomas. You offered to let him touch the holes in your resurrected body. Do you love me any less? Really putting God to the test. making ultimatums. But as irreverent as I was being, it was a sincere request. I told him I need to touch the spiritual realm for faith. And if there is no God, then I'm talking to myself and I'm a crazy man. Good night. That was my prayer. Televangelists at the breakfast table, please pass the Cheerios. I used to think that the Bible was the Quaker oat man. You ever heard the expression, be careful what you pray for? You might just get it. It was one night, I was woken up, and whatever woke me up was hovering over me. It was hazy, as if something was there and it was cloaked from visible sight, but I could tell where it was, and I could tell it didn't want to be seen. But I could see where it was at the same time. I could feel it there. And it could communicate with me. Now, people often ask me, was it out loud? The only way to answer that question is no, it was clearer than that. See, when I communicate with you, from human being to human being, I make sounds, vibrations bounce off the eardrum, send a signal to the brain, processes the message. There's like 9 steps to that process, Communication 101, 9 steps to communication. This thing could skip the first 8 steps and went straight to a crystal clear communication telepathically planted in my mind. It is to date the clearest communication I have ever experienced. No room for misunderstanding. No room for interpretation. It said, I just woke you up. I am in the room with you. I am real. I am evil. I intend you harm. I said, what are... See, I didn't know yet. You don't engage these things in dialogue. I could have learned from Eve that you don't have a conversation with the serpent. He just wants to get you kicked out of paradise. Don't engage the things in don't talk to snakes. It's good advice in general. But I'm so fascinated, I've got my proof, right? I'm engaged in telepathic communication with a supernatural being, something beyond nature, and yet it still has intelligence and will and can communicate. Fallen angels are real. I got my proof. Uh-oh. It's in the room with me too. Now I got to get rid of it. So I said, why can't I see you? And it says, I'm able to travel invisible to your human eyes, but make no mistake about it, I'm here. And I want you to die. And I could feel its malevolence. I could feel its hatred as it hovered above me and then descended on me and gripped me from the shoulders down like a boa constrictor. Legs locked together, arms locked to the side, forcibly locked. No amount of human strength could break this thing's grip. I look down as I see the pressure of nothing. It's invisible. And I see this hovering presence, kind of hazy, cloaked thing pressing down on me, and I'm just looking in utter fascination. It's real. The spiritual realm is real. And I'm not going to live to tell about it. Nobody's going to know I was murdered. This is so unfair. So, I know Jesus kept, encountering these things around every corner, but, I didn't really believe it, I guess. Now I do. What do I do? So I start screaming, and I'm trying to get this thing off me. I could only move my head, so I'm flailing my head back and forth. Nothing could break the grip. I let out my last air, screaming for help. Nobody came to my aid, and now I was suffocating to death. I said, this figures. This figures. Get my proof. Gonna die. They won't know why. So I said in my last-ditch effort, I said in my head, all right, God, if this thing's real, then so are you. And I'm not afraid of it. I'm afraid of who it answers to. I'm afraid of its creator, my creator, the creator. Got it. And I knew enough to know what name to call upon. And so I said in my mind, if this thing communicates telepathically, then God can hear my thoughts. I don't need any audible vocals left. So I prayed in my mind to the thing that's on me, I command you, go away in the name of Jesus. And at that name, This thing was gone. I mean, like that. And the last thing I picked up from it was stark terror at the name I had just called upon. This thing was running with its tail and its legs. It was petrified, more scared than I was. Oh, I leap out of my bed. I race down the hallway. I wake my parents up. You're not going to... I tell them what happened. My mom says, I always knew something like this was going to happen to you. Okay, Mom. So you know that one day invisible, malevolent assassins are going to try to come into my bedroom and assassinate me in the night. That's on the list of stuff Ian can know about. And then she laughs and says, would you have believed me? My Darwin-reading, 8-year-old agnostic skeptic, growing up reading these books. Would you have believed me? I said, no, of course not. She said, you needed to see it for yourself. I said, well, how did you know? She said, because when I was pregnant with you, invisible things tried to crush me to death. And I knew they were trying to kill whoever was growing inside me. So I don't know what a calling is on your life or what anointing, but I knew they'd probably show themselves eventually. And I said, well, I need Jesus. So you're ready to become a Christian? Yes. So got on my knees in my parents' bedroom and said officially the sinner's prayer, asked Jesus into my heart. I was washed clean of my sins, incredible stuff, and with a broken heart for other skeptics like me. Other people who needed proof. So I started to pore over apologetics, defenses of the Christian faith. And just my mind was exploding with just how much evidence there is. Like, this is real. People don't suffer and die for something they knew never happened. Like our first pope said, these aren't cunningly devised fables. We were eyewitnesses of this. The resurrection is real. We saw it, and we were willing to go to our deaths for it. People do not willfully suffer and die through imprisonment and martyrdom for something they never saw, for a lie. This is real. It happened. And I was exploding with just how much evidence there was. And I started giving talks to my high school classes and talks to my science teachers, my social studies teachers. And fast forward to my senior year of high school in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, when I was valedictorian, which happens to nerdy, brainy kids like me. And I had the honor of saying goodbye to my graduating class. And so they wanted us to turn in a draft of our speech. And the most important thing to me was God. So that's what I wanted to tell my classmates about as I said farewell to them. And the speech advisor at Mount Pleasant said, you can't give this speech. It's about Jesus. We'll censor it. I said, well, we have freedom of religion and freedom of speech in this country. She said, yeah, but the school won't allow it. I said, well, yeah, but Mount Pleasant High School doesn't override the Constitution of the United States. And she says, nice history lesson. I know you, Ian. You're going to write some fake speech just to get it past me, and then when you're up at that podium on graduation night, you'll give your real speech. So mark my words. If you mention the name of Jesus at commencement, I will pull the plug on that name. I will pull the plug on the PA system myself. And I have the principal's backing on this. You're done. So I said, well, is that clear? I said, well, it's not right, but yeah, it's clear. I go home and I'm looking at, I was pretty patriotic, still am. Both grandfathers fought in World War II. Sitting down, I'm looking at my American Legion Patriotism Award sitting on my dresser. No, this isn't right. This isn't right. So I call up the local paper. And I said, they're not letting me give my graduation speech, and I think I have a right to free speech, so I was wondering, since they won't let me give it, if you would print it. They said, they're not allowed to do that. It's a free country, free speech, freedom of the press. I said, well, yeah, that's why I'm calling you. They said, oh, no, this is bigger than us. Here, hang on the line, hang on the line. I didn't realize they were patching me through to the Tribune Review, which, that reached the tri-state area. This guy gets on the phone. All right, kid, what's your story? So I said, well, Mount Pleasant High School won't let me give my commencement address because I mentioned Jesus. They can't do that. It's a free country. They're not allowed to do that. The Constitution. I said, well, yeah, that's what I said. So, I'm on the phone with you. Where do you live? I said, well, in the middle of the, boondocks, dairy farmlands of Acme, Pennsylvania. We'll be there. They found it in minutes. They must have sped. They come with the media van. They do the interview. On his way out the door, he gets my permission to release the story to the Associated Press, and I was 18 years old. I didn't know what that meant. What's the AP wire? Well, it's some national network of news stories that people can pick up across the country and world. I didn't know that. He just said, can we have your permission? I said, okay. I didn't also know that he was recording the thing. He recorded the entire interview and didn't tell me. When other kids were out fishing and playing baseball and swimming, I was poring over the Hebrew scriptures. Don't talk to snakes. It's good advice in general. So all kinds of things are just like, this is taking on a life of its own. He's on his way out the door. He says, do we have your permission? I says, is this going to help me be heard? I think I have a right to. Oh, it can only help. Then, yeah, you have my permission. Oh, thanks, kid. And then that's when he pulls out the recorder and hits stop. I said, whoa, you didn't tell me. He said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And then they're gone. Next day, I go to high school. A guy comes up to me. I heard you on DVE, man. You sounded great. Then they played some Zeppelin. I think I'd remember opening for Zeppelin. I wasn't on DVE. I heard you on B94, man. I heard you on the country station. I heard you on 96.1. I heard you on the oldies station. I was all over. The AP wire sent picked it up by all the news channels of the local radio, which recorded an interview that they broadcasted. Then my friend comes up to me with the Tribune Review, Friday, May 21st, 1993. Holds it up, full color picture. Commencement speech about religion rejected. Free speech denied on the front page. And it exploded into a media circus. It went national. I started getting calls from people trying to picket the school, political organizations, religious organizations. They started calling me the free speech kid. People were sending me papers from Maine, from Texas, from California. I realized this had gone national. The paparazzi shows up. I mean, it's just like it is in the movies. The throngs of cameras, the microphones in your face, the flashing lights. It is just like that. It was a media circus for 2 months. It got so bad, we went to hide out in Michigan from Pennsylvania. And Channel 4 chased me with a helicopter because they wanted another interview. They were opening up the news on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. They were opening up the news instead of with their normal news theme, with the graduation theme, and my mug. Like focusing in on me as that, like I was opening the news every day. I had the interviews, they're coming in, you know, they're at my house, they're following me through the high school, they're chasing me in choppers across the country. And I was on talk shows, I was on radio interviews, constant articles, follow-up, and I was famous. Nationally, a lawyer writes to me, hey, we'll take this to the Supreme Court if it goes that high. Heard about your story. I ended up in a textbook. Somebody came up to me and said, are you the Ian Murphy? Yeah, the free speech kid. Yeah, that's me. THE in front of my name at 18 years old. Been trying to get PhD after it for years, and it still doesn't matter as much to people as the Ian Murphy. You know, when I was a kid, didn't even understand what was happening to me. But he said, we learned about you in our law class, man. You're in the textbooks. I said, where's my royalties? But apparently I am. I'm also in this youth video put out by the Christian and Missionary Alliance for like inspiring young people not to be ashamed of the gospel and, you know, let no one put you down for your young age. Anyone can say yes to Jesus. You know, those were heavy days. You know, fan mail flooding in, cash, and girls suddenly liked me. Like fame, cash, high quality babes, serving Jesus is tight. You know, it wasn't all pony rides and May sunshine. I mean, there was plenty of persecution, you know, some pulled into a dark room and beat up, somebody hurling Bibles at my face after the speech, you know, threats. But aside from some glorious persecution for the sake of the gospel, mostly it was well received by people, you know, even if they weren't Christians, standing up for free speech rights. So, boy, did it launch an incredible ministry, which culminated when 2 months after the speech, and the school backed down under all the pressure, they let me give the talk. They had throngs of security holding back the cameras and the flashing lights and everything. And they televised it. So now millions of people got to hear me talk about Jesus because somebody tried to silence that name. And one of my classmates became a Christian as a result, which, man, it showed me that, you know, this is my real love. And with so much momentum behind it, I thought, you know, what could God do if this started at 18? And it really, really took off. A couple months after I gave the speech, media shows back up. I said, it's been a while. It kind of died down. What are you doing back here? And they said, well, we're envoys on behalf of Senator Arlen Specter. And he specifically requested that he get this live. So we're not going to rehearse first like the normal interviews. We're just going to roll tape. Are you cool with that? And I said, yeah. So you do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they point to the cameraman, and you're standing there scared, and they're talking to you. They say, don't look at the camera, look at the interviewer, all this stuff. And she says, Senator Arlen Specter followed your story start to finish, and inspired by your stand for free speech, drafted a bill to the U.S. Congress officially protecting the rights of valedictorians so that these attempts at censorship won't happen again. It flew through both houses of Congress in a matter of 8 weeks, and the president ratified it. It's now a law. How does it feel to know that at 18 years old, you just changed the laws of our country? Now, here's me. Good. And there you have it. The free speech says it feels good. Back to you at the studio. That's what I do with my 15 minutes of fame. Good. Yeah, I said, could we please redo that? She says, no, it's priceless. He's going to love it. The grocery store with my mom, and I said, let's get some Bibles. She said, well, that's an interesting interest. We have plenty at home. I said, no, I already ate them all up.